in Self-Reg, there are 5 steps in Self-Reg. And the key to Self-Reg is really learning when we are becoming overstressed. Not when we are overstressed, but rather there's a graph that we use. It's an inverted V. And what we find, so you can imagine that. And so what we find is that when you go past the apex of the curve, that's when you're at a high risk of depression or an anxiety disorder. So what we want to do is we want to know when we're getting close to the apex. We want the kid to be aware of when they are in fact overstressed. Now, the problem that we have is we have a generation that doesn't actually know what calm feels like. This is not a word. I can't teach a kid, with a dictionary definition, nor can I ever get a child to calm down by saying you need to calm down. But what we're seeing is a generation that have avoided that sort of restorative phase where you're quiet, where your mind is quiet. Instead, you're constantly seeking out forms of stimulus, and it could be music, it could be a movie, whatever, to keep yourself going, to avoid that, to avoid the sort of feeling of a crash. So what we have to do is the 4th step of Self-Reg is the sort of pivotal one, and that's where they learn what calmness feels like. Not a word, but a feeling. What does it feel like when if you think about, say, progressive relaxation or yoga, what does that state feel like? With that knowledge, that embodied knowledge, now they can begin to identify when they are becoming overstressed, when the stress load is getting too high. Now, the next step is it is not obvious when or why you're becoming overstressed. And there are things in our lives today. I mean, look, there's obvious ones, right? So turn on the news. Yeah, okay, I get it. The U.S. is in a very polarized red brain state. That's going to stress the hell out of everybody. But you made a huge point at the beginning. This has been going on way before our current political nightmare or our current public health nightmare. So there's a guy called, I'm blanking on his name now, David Kessler, who wrote a book, The End of Overeating. It's a really good book. And one of the points he makes is that soft drinks, so soda, is actually a stressor. You think, well, that can't be. I mean, how could a can of pop be a stressor? Well, the reason is because deep inside our brain, we have a system that monitors all kinds of levels in our body. And one of the things it monitors is glucose in the bloodstream. And if there's too much glucose in the bloodstream, that's actually dangerous. It's toxic. So the brain triggers an operation to get rid of the excess glucose. So I can have a couple of cans of pop, and while I'm sleeping, my brain is burning an enormous amount of energy to get rid of that extra glucose. So it breaks it down and then it gets secreted. So here's a case where who knew that could be a stress? But if you take my definition of stress, anything that requires us to burn energy, then that's a stress. And so we start to, when you're working with the teen on Self-Reg, what we want them to do is we give them something called a stress inventory. And it's fascinating to see how many stresses are in their lives that they would not even suspect were a stress. Okay. And that's the key. So there's obvious stresses, lack of sleep, poor diet, but then there are hidden stresses. And it's the hidden ones that have really, to come back to one of your earlier questions, it's the hidden ones that have accumulated. But what I liked about your question was that at the end of the day, they have to be the one that becomes empowered through this. They have to be the one, they're a teenager now. And so they have to recognize that they're overstressed or becoming overstressed, why, and then finally what they can do to reduce the stress load on them.
Okay, so this is big. This is so huge. When you said teens don't know what calm is.
Yes.
And if you're a teenager, you're probably not eating great. I'm going to overgeneralize, but probably
Yep.
not eating great, probably not
Yep.
sleeping great. I
Yep.
heard a term called micro moments, that you have these little micro moments that are all filled with tech now, checking the phone.
That's a good term.
Yeah. So this is really fascinating, that at the root of the epidemic could be this lack of calm in their lives, with all these things contributing to it.